Welcome to my video Managing Clients in System Center 2012 R2 Configuration Manager. These are the following objectives. After completing this lab, I'll be able to verify that the Configuration Manager 2012 client is communicating with the site, breaking the Configuration Manager 2012 client so that it's no longer communicate with the site, repair the Configuration Manager 2012 client with the client health feature, verify that the Configuration Manager 2012 client is communicating with the site, report on client health status, view and modify default client settings, create and assign custom client settings, verify custom client settings implementation, use new remote control features. The estimated time to complete this lab will be 75 minutes. The computers used in this lab is the primary and the client. The first task will be initiating a discovery data collection cycle, heartbeat discovery, to validate client to site communications. So we're going to Configuration Manager in Control Panel. The Configuration Manager Properties dialog box appears. Notice that the client is a client assigned to the MCM site and is using the assigned management point for the site primary 1. Going to Actions tab. Now the Configuration Manager Properties dialog box displays the available actions for the Configuration Manager client. Click Discovery Data Collection Cycle and click Run Now. A Discovery Data Collection Cycle message box appears, indicating the action was initiated and may take several minutes to complete. This process forces the client to create and send a heartbeat discovery record to its management point. By clicking OK, the Configuration Manager properties disappear. If the client can successfully create and send a heartbeat discovery record to the management point, that is an indication that the client is healthy and communicating successfully with the Configuration Manager site. In the following procedure, you will use the Configuration Manager console to validate that the client successfully communicated with the site by viewing the timestamp of the latest heartbeat discovery record. Now we change the machine to the primary one. The Configuration Manager System Console has been opened. The System Center 2012 R2 Configuration Manager console window appears, and it's displaying the Assets and Compliance Overview page. You could also have launched the Configuration Manager console by navigating to Start All Programs System Center 2012 R2 Configuration Manager console. In the navigation pane, click Device Collections. The available device collections appear in the result pane. Notice that there are 6 collections available. In the result pane, click Configuration Manager Clients and then on the ribbon Show Members. The Configuration Manager clients not appear in the navigation pane under Devices as a sticky note. Notice that the members of the Configuration Manager clients collection appear in the result pane. Notice also that there are 3 members of the device collection. You should have also just used the devices, not to view all devices discovered. However, the collection only displays the client computers, so it's a reduced set of resources that what appears in the devices not. In the result pane, click Client 1 and then on the Home tab of the ribbon click Properties. The Client 1 Properties dialog box appears displaying general discovery properties for the client. Notice that one of the entries for agent name has a value of heartbeat discovery. It should be at last of the discovery agents listed. This is a data generated by the discovery data collection cycle on the client. The agent time value for this agent should be the last time in the agent time list, should be very recent. If so, that indicates that the client is indeed sent a heartbeat discovery record to the site and it's healthy. Click Cancel. The member of the Configuration Manager clients collection appear in the result pane. You have now validated that the client can successfully communicate with the site. We will break the client in the next exercise. Click the Monitoring Workspace. The overview page of the Monitoring Workspace appears. In the navigation pane, click Client Status. The Client Status dashboard appears displaying the current overall client status. Client health is determined when clients are installed, configured and functioning properly, according to the client health configuration. Client activity is that status of clients in the communicating specific types of client data to the site in the configured time periods. Notice that there are no health failures in the site and that one of the 3 clients is considered healthy and active. The other 2 are in the Windows 8 client that is not running for this lab, and the primary one which has not reported yet. In the navigation pane, expand Client Status and then click Client Activity. The Client Activity dashboard appears displaying the current status for client activity. Notice that 1 client is considered active in the site and 2 are inactive. Notice also that at the bottom of the page the trend information for the past 5 days in our lab environment. You likely will not see trend information as the virtual machines have been turned off and not collecting information. In the navigation pane, click Client Check. The Client Check dashboard appears displaying the current status for client health. Notice that all 3 clients are considered healthy and that 3 have been no remediation attempts. Notice also that at the bottom of the page the trend information for the past 5 days. In our lab environment, you likely will not see the trend information as the virtual machines have been turned off and not collecting information. On the Home tab of the ribbon, click Client Status Settings. The Client Status Settings Properties dialog box appears displaying the general properties for client status. Notice that by default, Configuration Manager 2012 is configured to verify that the client sends 4 types of data every week, as well as to poll for policies weekly by default. Clients should poll for policies hourly, and to retain client status historical data for 31 days. Click Cancel. The Client Activity page appears displaying the current status for client activity. The Schedule Client Status Update dialog box appears, displaying the schedule for updating the client status pages. Notice that by default Configuration Manager 12 is configured to update the status daily. In the result pane under Client Check, click the green portion of the pie part graph. The Assets and Compliance workspace appears, displaying a sticky note under Devices. The title of the sticky note depends on what portion of the graph you clicked. In this case, you clicked a green section of the pie chart, so the sticky note is titled Clients that passed the client check from Configuration Manager clients. If there were any unhealthy clients and you clicked the unhealthy portion of the chart red, then the sticky note is titled Clients that failed client check from Configuration Manager clients, or whatever collection was listed on the summary page of the monitoring client check node. Notice that the current healthy or unhealthy clients appear under Devices in the appropriate sticky note. Appropriate sticky notes can also be generated from the client status and client activity nodes of the monitoring workspace. You will read more information on the client health and client activity later in this lab. Step 2. Creating a broken Configuration Manager 2012 client. In this exercise you will run a batch file that will break the Configuration Manager 2012 client. This will prevent the client from communicating with the site. You will then validate that the client is no longer able to communicate with the management point. On client 1, start a command prompt window and run the following command. A series of commands are run on the client to corrupt VMI and stop the SMS agent host service. As a result of this corruption, a series of balloon notifications also appear on the client. When the batch file has completed, close the administrator command prompt window. The client should be now unable to successfully communicate with the management point, which you will validate that in the next task. Going back to the configuration manager, notice that there is no data displayed in the General tab. Clicking on the Action tab, the Configuration Manager Properties dialog box displays the available actions for the Configuration Manager client. Note that there are no actions available for the client, so click Cancel. The client is not able to communicate with the sites as it cannot start any Configuration Manager client functions. In this scenario, the client is broken and must be repaired. In the Configuration Manager 2007, you would need to do the repair manually or for some custom scripts. However, in the lab environment, you will repair the clients using the Client Health feature on Configuration Manager 2012 in the next exercise. Validating that the SMS agent host service is not running. Going to Control Panel and click System and Security, click Administrative Tools and then Start Services. The Services window appears, displaying the services for the client. Notice that the SMS agent host service is not running, even though it is configured to start automatically. Repairing a broken Configuration Manager 2012 client. In this exercise, you will repair the Configuration Manager 2012 client, which will allow it to communicate with the site. You will repair the Configuration Manager client using the built-in Client Health feature of Configuration Manager 2012. After the client has been repaired, you will validate that the client's SMS agent host service has started and that is able to communicate with the site. In the production environment, the Client Health feature would have run automatically and repaired the client without being manually initiated. Start a command prompt. Change directory to the following folder. Run the ccm evaluation.exe. The ccm eval.exe component starts and repairs the client. This component automatically runs daily after midnight as a scheduled task. However, it can be launched on demand as you have just done. Start the Task Manager to monitor the status of ccm eval.exe. The ccm eval.exe component will repair the client, including the VMI repository, and reinstalling the SMS agent host. This will take a few moments to repair the client, as the SMS agent host service is reinstalled from the client locally, not from the distribution point or management point like the initial client installation. Remain at this point until the ccm eval.exe process has terminated. The ccm exe process has started. If you want to track the progress, you can view the Windows CCM logs ccm eval.log. The log records the processing of the ccm eval.exe task. Validating the client has been repaired. In Control pane, click System and Security, click Administrative Tools and then Start Services. Note the Services window appear as displaying the services for the client. Notice that the SMS agent host service is running as it has been repaired by the client health feature of Configuration Manager 2012. In Control Panel, return to System and Security and then click Configuration Manager. The Configuration Manager Properties dialog box appears. Notice that the client is a member of the site MCM and using the assigned management point primary 1. Recall in the previous exercise that after breaking the client, no data was displayed on the General tab of the Configuration Manager Properties display box. With the Configuration Manager client having been repaired, the client is functional again. Click on the Action tab. The Configuration Manager Properties dialog box displays the available actions for the Configuration Manager client. Recall that after breaking the client, there were no actions available. You do not have to manually initiate the running of a discovery data collection cycle, as that is generated automatically after reinstalling the client. If you don't see all the actions you'd expected to see, such as the discovery data collection cycle, close the Configuration Manager Properties dialog box and wait a moment and start it again. Click Cancel. If the client can successfully create and send a heartbeat discovery record to the management point, that is an indication that the client is healthy and communicating fine. It will take a couple of moments before the heartbeat DDR has been created and processed into the site database. In the following procedure, you will validate that the client is able to communicate with the management point after the repair of the Configuration Manager client. The task is completed on primary 1. First step is to validate that the client has been repaired from the Configuration Manager console. Therefore, click the Assets and Compliance workspace and then in the navigation pane click on Configuration Manager Clients. The Assets and Compliance workspace appears displaying the members of the Configuration Manager client collection appears in the result pane. Notice that all 3 of these members of the collection. In the result pane, click Client 1 and then on the Home tab of the ribbon click Properties. The Client 1 Properties dialog box appears displaying general discovery properties for the client. Notice that one of the entries for agent name has a value of heartbeat discovery. This is data generated by the discovery data collection cycle on the client. The agent time value for this same agent should be very recent. If so, that indicates that the client did indeed send a heartbeat discovery record to the site after being repaired and is considered healthy. Click Cancel. The members of the Configuration Manager client's collection appear in the result pane. You have now validated that the client can successfully communicate with the site. You will view the result of the client health remediation process later in this procedure. This task was to simply validate that the client is now able to communicate with the site again. Validating client health. Click the Monitoring workspace. The Monitoring workspace appears displaying the most recently summarized client health data. In the navigation pane, click Client Status. The Client Status dashboard appears displaying the current status for both client health and client activity. Client health is when clients are considered active and healthy as they are communicating with the site in an administrator-configured period of time. Client activity is that status of clients in the communicating specific types of client data to the site in the configured time periods. The client health feature summarizes client data on a daily basis, although it can be forced through the console, which you will do next. On the ribbon, click Refresh Client Status. This will force an update of the statistics and charts based on the most recent state of information regarding client status received by each client. The client status dashboard appears displaying the current status for client health and activity. Notice that one client is considered healthy and one is listed as having failed client check. In the navigation pane, expand Client Status and then click Client Check. The Client Check dashboard appears displaying the current status for client health. Notice that 2 clients are considered healthy and one is listed as having failed client check. This is as the last time the client health data was summarized, which you can see above the summary charts. The summary information likely was updated earlier today. Reporting on client health data. From the monitoring workspace, expand Reporting and expand Reports and then click Client Status. The list of Configuration Manager 2012 R2 reports in the Client Status category appears in the result pane. Notice that there are 7 reports available. In the result pane, click the Client Status Summary. Run the report. The Client Status Summary report window appears. Following to specify the collection the report should be run for, as well as the specific Configuration Manager client version to report status for. After collection, click Values. The Parameter Value dialog box appears, displaying the available collections. Notice that all device collections are displayed. Under Collection, click Client Configuration Manager Clients and then click OK. The Client Status Summary Report window appears, displaying the collection the report should be run for. Notice that you can also specify the client version for the report to run for. Notice that also the default value is Configuration Manager 2012 clients only. In the lab environment, you only have 3 Configuration Manager 2012 clients, so are fine using the default parameter value. Click View Report. The Client Status Summary Report window displays the report for the summary of client health. Notice that the reports includes a gauge for the percentage of activity clients that are considered healthy in the specific collection. The data is accurate according to the last client health state data received and summarized from clients. The report only displays data for the active clients, so will only display for 2 of the 3 clients in the designated collection. Close the Client Status Summary window. The list of reports in the Client Status category appears in the Result pane. In the Result pane, click Client Status History and then on the ribbon click Run. The Client Status History report window appears, allowing you to specify the collection the report should be run for, as well as the time period to report historical data for. After collection, click Values. The Parameter Value dialog box appears, displaying the available collections. Under Collection, click Configuration Manager Clients and click OK. The Client Status History report window appears, displaying the collection the report should be run for. After Time Range, click Values. The Parameter Value dialog box appears, displaying the applicable time range for historical data. Notice that the options are to display data from the past 5 days to the past 90 days. Under time range, click 4 weeks and then click OK. The client status history report window appears, displaying the collection and time range the report should be run for. Click View Report. The client status history report window displays the report for the historical view of client health. Notice that the reports include charts on the percentage of clients that are considered healthy, as well as the client activity in the specific collection for the designated time period. The data is accurate according to the last client health state data received and summarized from clients. Due to the age of the images, you may not see any data here. However, in your production environments, you should see historical data. Close the client status history report window. The list of reports in the client status category appears in the result pane. In the result pane, click Client Remediation Summary. The Client Remediation Summary report window appears, prompting for the collection to report on, as well as the remediation result, success or failure. After collection, click Values. The Parameter Value dialog box appears, displaying the available collections. Under Collection, click Configuration Manager Clients and click OK. The Client Remediation Summary report window appears, displaying the collection to report results for, and prompting for the remediation results, success or failure. After remediating result, click Values. The Parameter Value dialog box appears, displaying two options for remediation result, failed and succeeded. Under Remediation Result, click Remediation Succeeded and then click OK. Click View Report. The Client Remediation Summary report window appears, displaying any successful remediation results and the number of successful remediation for each result. Notice that there is one result for VMI repository integrity test. If you had previously run an additional CCM eval.exe cycle on the client, you will not see any results in this report, as the client's last evaluation was to report that everything was evaluated successfully with no issues to remediate. Close the Client Remediation Details report window. In the result pane, click Clients with failed client check details and then on the ribbon click Run. The Clients with failed client check details report window appears, prompting for the collection to respond. After collection, click Values. Under Collection, click Configuration Manager Clients. Click OK. Click View Report. The Clients with failed client check details report window appears, displaying client check failures and the number of clients that failed any client checks. If you had previously run an additional CCM eval.exe cycle on the client, you will not see any results in this report, as the client's last evaluation was to report that everything was evaluated successfully with no issues to remediate. Close the Clients with failed client check details report window. This list of reports in the client status category appears in the result pane. 4. Verifying client health configuration in Configuration Manager 2012 client configuration. In this exercise, you will verify the Configuration Manager 2012 client health configuration on the client computer by viewing the configuration on the client in Task Scheduler. The following tasks will be completed on Client 1. First, identifying client health component schedule and configuration. In Control Panel, click System and Security. Under Administrative Tools, click Schedule Tasks. Under Task Scheduler, expand the Task Scheduler library, expand Microsoft, and then click Configuration Manager. The Task Scheduler window displays the current configuration of the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service. Notice that the top window pane displays the schedule daily at some random time between midnight and 1 a.m. The next and last times the evaluation was run and the last run result. Notice also that the bottom window pane indicates that the evaluation runs whether or not a user is logged on. Notice that there is a second scheduled task added in Configuration Manager 2012 SP1 and Configuration Manager 2012 R2, that being the Configuration Manager idle detection task. In the bottom window pane, click the Triggers tab. The Task Scheduler window displays the schedule for the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service. Notice it runs daily at some random time just after midnight. In the bottom window pane, click the Action tab. The Task Scheduler window displays the program that it runs for the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service. Notice that this runs the same program that you manually ran earlier in this lab. In the bottom window pane, click the Condition tab. The Task Scheduler window displays the conditions for running the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service. Notice that it runs whether or not the system is on EC power or battery, and that the evaluation should stop if the computer is no longer idle. Notice also that the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service does not wake up a client to perform the check. If a computer is not running during the scheduled time, it should run the check soon after starting up. In the bottom window pane, click the Settings tab. The Task Scheduler window displays the setting for the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service. Notice that it can be run on demand, as you already experienced, that it runs as soon as possible if it misses the scheduled time, and stops running if it has been running for more than 3 days. In the bottom window pane, click the History tab. The Task Scheduler window shows the history of the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation Service execution. Notice that you can see the past configuration and execution of the service. Note that this view takes a moment to display to result. Close the Task Scheduler window. You are not going to make any changes to the schedule. This was simply to show you how you can configure it to run on a different schedule and with different settings if appropriate. If you have now successfully used the Client Health feature for Configuration Manager 2012 to automatically remediate common client health issues with Configuration Manager, both a VMI corruption issue as well as a user stopping the SMS agent host service. You also use the Configuration Manager to console to view the client health status and client activity, both in the console's client status node, as well as reports. This includes forcing a summarization to display the most recent client health data from clients. You then viewed the default configuration for the Configuration Manager Health Evaluation component. In the next exercise, you will view and modify the default client setting for your site. 5. Modifying default client settings. In this exercise, you will view and modify the default Configuration Manager 2012 client settings for the environment. You will then verify that the modified settings are implemented on clients in the environment. The following tasks are on Primary 1. First, modifying the default client settings. Click the Administration workspace and then in Navigation pane, click Client Settings. The available client settings appear in the result pane. Notice that there is only one client setting available, that being the default client setting. In the result pane, click Default Client Settings and then on the ribbon click Properties. The default setting dialog box appears, displaying the default client setting for the environment. In this lab environment, the only two modified settings from the default configuration are the software inventory file path as well as the state message reporting interval. All other settings are set to the default value for the specific version of Configuration Manager 2012. Under the navigation pane, click Computer Agent. The default setting dialog box displays the setting for Computer Agent. Notice that organization name displayed in Software Center is not configured. With no configuration, with no configured value, a default value of IT organization is displayed. In the organization name displayed in Software Center box, type in TestLab Clients. In the navigation pane, click Remote Tools. The default settings dialog box displays the settings for remote control. Notice that Enable Remote Control on Clients is disabled. You will enable it for later use in the lab. After Enable Remote Control on Clients, click Configure. The Remote Control and Windows Firewall Client Settings dialog box appears, allowing you to enable remote control. Click to select Enable Remote Control on Client computers. The Remote Control and Windows Client Firewall Settings dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the Windows Firewall to allow remote control. If you enable any of the three firewall profiles, the firewall will be configured to open the port needed for remote control, TCP 2701. Click to select Domain and then click OK. Note the default settings dialog box displays the setting for remote control. Notice that Enable Remote Control on Clients is now enabled. Notice also that Prompt User for remote control permission is enabled. Click OK. The default client setting appears in the result pane. For sites in hierarchy, the default client setting is Global Data, which means that it is replicated to all primary sites as well as the central administration site in the hierarchy, so that all sites have a consistent set of client settings. You will create custom client settings in the next exercise to experience how you can override the default settings. In the next procedure, you will implement the modified client settings on the two clients in the site. In the following procedure, you will implement the modified client settings on both of the Configuration Manager clients, Client 1, Windows 7, and Primary 1, the site server. You could manually initiate a machine policy retrieval and evaluation cycle on each client. However, as of for the Service Pack 1 release of Configuration Manager 2012, the ability to initiate this action from the Configuration Manager console is included in Configuration Manager. Tasks will be completed on Primary 1. First, implement modified client settings from the Configuration Manager console using a real-time action. Click the Assets and Compliance workspace. The Assets and Compliance workspace appears, displaying the client that failed the client health check. In the navigation pane, click Device Collections. The available device collections appear in the result pane. Notice that there are 6 collections available. In the result pane, click Configuration Manager Clients. And then on the ribbon, click Home, then Configuration Manager Clients, and then click Client Notification. A new menu appears with 2 options: Download Computer Policies and Download User Policies. These will force each client in the collection to immediately initiate an appropriate policy check, such as a machine policy retrieval and evaluation cycle, just as if you were to manually initiate it on each client. Click Download Computer Policy. A Configuration Manager message box appears indicating that there are 3 resources in the collection that will receive this action. Click OK. The policy is pushed to each online client. This policy will modify the organization name displayed in the Software Center. You will verify that in Software Center later. On the Start menu, expand All Programs, Microsoft System Center 2012 Configuration Manager, and click Software Center. The Software Center window appears. Notice that the organization name in the upper right corner displays Test Lab Clients. Recall that the default configuration was this value is not configured, and as a result, IT organization would have been displayed for the organization name if no customized value has been configured. Click the Option tab. The Software Center window appears displaying options the user can configure locally. Expand Remote Control. The Software Center window appears displaying options the user can configure locally for remote control. Notice that the user cannot change the remote control settings. This is due to the default client settings not allowing the user to change these values. You will change this later in a custom device client setting. You could also verify that the Configuration Manager remote control service is now started, which was not started and displayed before, enabling the feature in default client settings and retrieving policies on the client. Close the Software Center. You now have verified that the modified client settings have been implemented on the client computer. In the next exercise, we will verify that in the custom settings client can be implemented on clients and will override the default client settings for a site. Later in the lab, you will test the remote control feature. 6. Implementing custom client settings. In this exercise, you will create custom client settings that will be implemented on server clients in the environment. You will then verify that the custom client settings are implemented only on server clients in the environment. You will begin by creating a collection of server systems in the site. Complete the following tasks on Primary 1. First, create a collection of servers. Click the Assets and Compliance workspace and then choose Device Collection. The available device collection are displayed in the result pane. Notice that there are 6 collections in the site. The Configuration Manager Clients collection is an administrator-created collection, as the Windows 8 Clients collection. The other 4 are built-in collection. On the ribbon in the Create group, click Create Device Collection. The Create Device Collection wizard general dialog box appears, allowing you to name the collection. Notice that you are required to specify a collection to limit this collection membership from. This is a requirement for all administrator-created collection in CM12. They must be limited to the membership of another collection. In the name box, type Data Center, and then after limiting collection, click Browse. The Select Collection dialog box appears, displaying the available device collections for our lab. You will limit it to the new collection to the membership for the All Systems collection in order to show the limiting and querying results. However, in your production environment, you may very well limit it to a smaller collection. Under Name, click All Systems and then click OK. The Create Device Collection wizard dialog box displaying the collection settings. Notice that the collection is now limiting to the results of All Systems collection. Click Next. The Create Device Collection Wizard Membership Rules dialog box appeared, allowing you to add a membership rules to the collection. Click Add Rule. A new menu appears displaying the 4 available membership rule types for the Configuration Manager 2012. Click Query Rule. The Query Rule Properties dialog box appears, allowing you to name the query that the collection membership rule will be used. In the name box, type Data Center and then click Edit Query Statement. The Query Statement Properties dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the query the collection membership rule will use. Click the Criteria button. The Query Statement Properties dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the criteria the collection. The icon resembles a starburst. The Criterion Properties dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the criterion for the query rule. Click Select. The Select Attribute dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the attribute for the query. In the Attribute class box, click System Resources. In the Attribute box, click Operating System Name and Version. Then click OK. The Criterion Properties dialog box appears, allowing you to configure the criterion for the query rule. Notice that the Where box displays the attribute class and attribute you selected. In the Operator box, click IsLike. In the Value box, type %server% and then click OK. The Query Statement Properties dialog box appears, displaying the criteria for the query. Notice the one criterion listed. Click OK. The Query Rule Properties dialog box appears, displaying the queries for the membership rule. Click OK. The Create Device Collection Wizard Membership Rules dialog box appears, displaying the membership rules for the collection name collection. Notice the Data Center query rule is displayed. Notice also that incremental updates for the collection is not enabled by default, which occur every 5 minutes, as well as a weekly full collection update. For our lab, it's not important to enable incremental collection updates. However, for your production environment, you may want to enable that feature. Click Next. The Create Device Collection Wizard summary box appears, indicating that the wizard is ready to create the collection. Click Next. The Create Device Collection Wizard completion dialog box appeared, indicating that the collection was created successfully. Click Close. The available collections appear in the result pane. Notice that there are now 7 collections displayed. In the result pane, click Data Center and then on the ribbon Show Members. The members of the collection are displayed in the result pane, as well as the Data Center sticky note added to the navigation pane under Devices. Notice that there are 5 members of the collection, including Primary 1. However, Client 1 is not a member of this collection, as it is not running a server operating system. You will create and assign a custom client setting to this collection in the next task. Notice also that none of the other members of the collection are installed as clients. They are simply discovered resources that are running a server operating system, so match the query. However, as they are no clients, they are not managed systems, and thus will not receive the new custom client settings. Create custom client settings. Click the Administration Workspace. The Administration Workspace appears, displaying the available client settings in the result pane. Notice that there is one only one client setting is available, that being the default client setting. On the ribbon, click Create Custom Client Settings. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box appears, allowing you to create a custom server device setting. Any settings configured in this custom device setting will override the hierarchy-wide default client setting. In the name box, type Data Center Clients. In the description box, type settings appropriate for data center servers. Under the Select the custom settings for the enforced on client devices, click to select Computer Agent, Power Management and Remote Tools. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box displays the selected settings categories in the navigation pane. In the navigation pane, click Computer Agent. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box displays the settings for Computer Agent. Notice that the organization name displayed in Software Center is configured with the modified settings configured in the previous exercise, Test Lab Clients or Marcus Lab. In the organization name displayed in the Software Center, type Test Lab Servers or Marcus Server Lab. In the navigation pane, click Power Management. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box displays the settings for power management. Notice that this default setting is to allow power management on devices. Power management is not supported for servers, so you will disable the setting. In the Allow Power Management of Device box, click No. In the navigation pane, click Remote Tools. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box displays the settings for remote tools. Notice that the default settings configured remote control to prompt the logged on users for permission before allowing the administrator to take remote control. This setting is not practical for server clients, where there is no user logged on to respond to the request, so you will disable the setting. In the prompt User for Remote Control Permission box, click No. The Create Custom Client Device Setting dialog box displays the setting for remote tools. Notice that the default setting is to not allow the end user to change available remote control settings locally as desired by the user. There is no need to change this value for server systems. However, you will change this in the lab to have a unique configuration change to evaluate for the custom client settings. In the users can change policy or notification setting in Software Center box. Click Yes and then click OK. The client settings appear in the result pane. Notice that the custom client setting Data Center Clients appears in the result pane with a priority of 1. This will take priority over the default client settings, which has a priority of 10,000. Notice also that the setting has not been deployed to any collection. In the next task, you will deploy the custom client settings to the collection of servers that you previously created. Assign custom client settings to a collection. In the result pane, click Data Center Clients, and then on the ribbon, click Deploy. The Select Collection dialog box appears displaying the available device collection. Notice that the number of numbers of each collection is displayed after each collection. Under Name, click Data Center and then click OK. The client settings appear in the result pane. Notice that the custom client setting Data Center Clients appear in the result pane along with default client settings. Notice also that the setting has now been deployed to the one collection. In the next procedure, you will implement the custom client settings on the server client. Verify the resultant client setting. Click the Asset and Compliant workspace. The Asset and Compliant workspace appears displaying the members of the data center collection. In the result pane, click Primary 1 and then on the Home tab of the ribbon, select Device and then click Client Settings. A new menu bar appears displaying the option Resultant Client Settings. The action will display the final result of all client settings applied to a client from a client setting deployments targeted to any collection the client is a member of. This is a new feature of CM12R2. Click Resultant Client Settings. The Resultant Client Settings dialog box appears displaying the final client settings that will be applied to the client computer. Notice that the dialog box resembles the same dialog box used to create client settings. In the navigation pane, click Computer Agent. The resultant client settings dialog box appears displaying the final client settings for Computer Agent that will be applied to the client computer. Notice that the configured value is TestLab Servers or Marcus Lab or Marcus Server Lab and not TestLab Clients or Marcus Lab, as was configured in the default client setting. In the navigation pane, click Power Management. The resultant client setting dialog box appears, displaying the final client setting for power management that will be applied to the client computer. Notice that power management is disabled on the client, even though it's enabled in the default client settings. In the navigation pane, click Remote Tools. The resultant client setting dialog box appears displaying the final client setting for remote tools that will be applied to the client computer. Notice that remote control is enabled. However, the user can change settings and is not required to provide permission for the remote control session as are set in the default client settings. Click OK. The members of the data center collection appear in the result pane. If you have now validated what settings will be applied to members of the data center collection, you will implement these settings in the next procedure. In the following procedure, you will attempt to implement the custom client settings on the Configuration Manager client, both the remote Windows 7 client as well as the site server client. You will implement this setting on your site server as a client using the download computer policy real-time administrative action. Task will be completed on Primary 1. Implement custom client setting from the Configuration Manager console using a real-time action. In the navigation pane, click Device Collection. The available device collection appear in the result pane. Notice that there are 7 collections available. In the result pane, click Data Center and then click on the Home ribbon, choose Data Center and then click Client Notification. A new menu appears with the 2 options for downloading policies. Click Download Computer Policy. A configuration messenger box appears indicating that there are 5 resources in the collection that will receive this action. Click OK. The policy is pushed to each online client, which is for this collection is only the site server computer. The policy will modify the organization name displayed in the software center, disable power management and modify the remote control configuration. You could have used any other collection you wanted to initiate the real-time action on, as long as the site server was a member of that collection. The client computer is not targeted with the new setting, so you would not be implemented even after the client were to receive policies. Verify the custom client settings implementation. On the Start menu, expand All Programs Microsoft System Center 2012 R2 Configuration Manager and then click Software Center. The Software Center window appears. Notice the organization name in the upper right corner on Client 1 will be displayed Test Lab Clients or Marcus Lab. On Primary 1 it will display Test Lab Servers or Marcus Server Lab. Click the Option tab. The Software Center window displays available options for the local client. Notice the different categories of settings: work information, power management, computer maintenance, and remote control. Expand remote control. The Software Center window displays available options for remote control. Notice that on Primary 1 the settings are able to be changed. You can clearly select it on the Use Remote Client Access settings from your IT department. While on Client 1 are you not able to change the settings, recall that you enable the ability for the user to change settings for remote control in the custom client settings, which you then assign to the collection of service computers. Notice also that the default configuration for when an administrator tries to control this computer remotely is set to Do Not Ask for Permission. On the server, while it's still set to the default value for Ask for Permission each time on Client 1. Close Software Center. You have now verified that the custom client settings have been implemented on the appropriate client computer, as the custom client setting was only assigned to a collection that the server was a member of. It was not implemented on the Windows 7 client. In the next procedure, you will verify that the custom client setting for remote control that was created was not applied to Client 1. 7. Implementing remote control. In the exercise, you will validate that the custom client settings have been implemented on the appropriate clients by initiating a remote control session to the Windows 7 client and validate that permission is required, the default organization. Recall that you already validate the custom settings client was implemented on the site server, as it did allow the settings to be changed locally on the site server as a client, whereas they could not be changed on Client 1. There is only one Configuration Manager console in the site, which is installed on the site server, and you cannot initiate a remote control session to the same computer that the console is running on, so we will not be able to validate configuration. The following tasks will be completed on Primary 1. First, start a remote control session to the Windows 7 client. Click the Assets and Compliance workspace. Note the Assets and Compliance workspace appears displaying the members of the data center collection. Notice that Client 1 is not a member of the collection, so did not receive the custom client settings to disable permissions required. In the navigation pane, click Device Collection. The available collections appear in the result pane. Notice that there are 7 collections available. In the result pane, click Configuration Manager Clients. And on the ribbon, click Show Members. The members of the Configuration Manager Clients collection appear in the result pane. This is not the collection that the custom client settings were deployed to, so we'll be using the default client settings. In the result pane, click Client 1 and then on the Home tab of the ribbon in the device group, click Start. A new menu appears with programs that can be started for the client computer. Notice that Remote Control is listed as a program that can be started for the client. Click Remote Control. The Contacting Remote Control Agent on Client 1 message box appears, indicating that it's asking user to allow remote control. This is the default configuration for remote control. To require that the remote user grants the administrator the right to initiate a remote control session. Remain at this point until the user is granted permission in the next procedure. For the remote control, notice that on Primary 1 the settings are able to be changed. You can clear the selection of the Use Remote Access settings from the IT department, while on Client 1 you are not able to change the settings. Recall that you enable the ability for the user to change settings for remote control in the custom client setting, which you then assign to the collection of server computers. Notice also that the default configuration for when an administrator tries to control the computer remotely is set to do not ask for permission on the server, while it's still set to the default value of ask for permission each time on client 1. You have now verified that the custom client settings have been implemented on the appropriate client computer, as the custom client setting was only assigned to a collection that the server was a member of. It was not implemented on the Windows 7 client. In the next procedure, you will verify the custom client setting for remote control has been created was not applied to client 1. In the following procedure, you will accept the remote control session that was initiated remotely from the Configuration Manager console on the site server computer. The Configuration Manager remote control message box appears prompting to accept the remote control session from Config Manager DOM Administrator. Notice that the organization name value from Software Center appears in the message box. In this case, the value is Test Lab Client or Marcus Lab Client or Marcus Lab from the default client settings, as no custom settings were deployed to the client. If you were attempting to establish a remote control session with primary 1 as a client, there would be no prompt displayed and the session would connect automatically as configured in the custom client settings assigned to the data center collection, which primary 1 is a member of, and it would display Conference Lab servers in the message box. Note that the Controlled by Config Manager DOM Administrator message box appears indicating that the client is currently being remotely controlled by Config Manager DOM Administrator. With this end of the exercise, the Managing Clients in System Center 2012 R2 Configuration Manager is finished. Thank you for your attention and have a great day.